Sorry. Okay. Tonight's event. This is the run sheet. So we are going to do a quick introduction. It's going to take about 5 minutes. The forum itself is going to go for about an hour and 10 minutes. That's the exciting part. That's the thing that you guys want to hear. You don't want to hear about me talking too much. We will have about 15 minutes for Q&A, which anyone can ask a question. I won't ask any. And then also we'll do one last final thought. So I'll ask the panelists to give us a final thought on one question. After that, it really is about if you can, it'd be great if everyone can stay back and do some networking, because that's the whole point of why we're doing these, is to actually get the data and BI community talking to each other. So hopefully you can actually stay for the whole event, but we'll be finished up around 8:15, 8:30. If you do need to go before then, completely understand. All right, let's get started. Oh. Welcome to the Humanised Data Forum. For those who don't know me, I won't bore you too much, but I've been doing IT recruitment for about 14 years, predominantly in Sydney, but I have recruited all around the world. I've been in Brisbane though for only 18 months. I love it up here. Besides like today where it's really bloody hot, I love it. There's no way I'll be moving back to Sydney or to Canberra where I'm born, mainly because I think everyone's a lot friendlier up here. However, there's always a however. What I have noticed is maybe, especially within data and BI, maybe the community and the networking social aspect of things and people talking to each other is probably not as prominent as it is in, say, Melbourne and Sydney. So we really want to start building that back up again. Obviously, with COVID times, that has been quite difficult to do, but let's try and create a community. So moving forward, we'll be hosting these probably every quarter. So I'm looking at the turnout today. I didn't actually expect so many people. By looking at the turnout today, we'll probably have to get a bigger venue. So that's great, but I'd like to see all of you again in probably 3 months' time, or hopefully before then as well. All right. I guess without further ado, let's speak to the panelists. Let's learn about panelists. We'll go through this as quickly as possible. But first up, Rachel Wojciech, is that right?
Yeah,
got that right. Rachel is the head of digital literacy and business engagement at Marta. You can see up here what an experience. She has a very cross-industry experience, mainly across banking and finance, tourism, healthcare, telecommunications, and energy, which spans across several countries. Rachel has a passion for enabling the workforce to be capable with data. She's creating awareness further afield to work towards a data-capable workforce. Rachel also has created and delivers a number of training courses on the subject of data visualization, storytelling, and dashboard design. Rachel, like I said, I've only been up here a short period of time, but everyone that I speak to that knows you speaks exceptionally highly of you, especially in regards to your vision towards visualization and how you change in that aspect. I know Aldo speaks very highly about that, so we're looking forward to your insights today. Cool. Mr. Dr. Evan Shelshire. Doctor is a head of analytics at Viari, a world-leading mathematical and predictive modeling company. He is an expert in artificial intelligence with a PhD in game theory from a Nobel Prize-winning university. How do I say that? Bielefeld in Germany. I haven't been there myself. I probably wouldn't get in anyway. He has many years of international experience from Germany, Sweden, and Australia in the development and design of AI tools for a variety of industries, having worked with Australia's top companies on all aspects of advanced analytical solutions. This is the part that gets me excited. He is also the author of a number of books, including the best-selling book on Amazon Innovation Tools. So I would suggest everyone go grab a copy, come meet him, get a signed copy, and probably worth a lot more afterwards. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah? There we go. Evan, thanks for coming along. All right, we got Tanya. Tanya's one of my favourites. I love being with her. We went for a wine the other day. She's nice and easy going. This is what we want in data. So let's go through it. Tanya has established an impressive career in building data capability at all levels within an organisation. She has a passion towards enabling a data-driven culture with a unique experience encompassing business acumen, analytics techniques, data strategy, modern data technologies, and infrastructure. That's a lot to say there. The Tanya specialises in bringing together the critical foundations for enterprise analytics, success such as the business strategy, operational capabilities, and helping organisations adopt data-driven innovations that are tailored to the challenges and constraints of the business. Again, this is my favourite part at the end. Tanya has a degree in economics and a strange drive to run ridiculously long distances through remote locations. How long was your run last week?
100 Ks.
100 Ks, whatever. Nice and short, you know? Was that a short one?
It wasn't too bad, no.
Okay, cool. Okay. And I'm sweating on the chair. I was talking about running 100 kilometres. So, Tanya, thank you very much. And Mr. Aldo Gutierrez. Is that how I pronounce it? Gutierrez. All right, Aldo has. There is a lot to say about Aldo, but we will go through this as quickly as possible. Aldo, 20 years of experience in analytics, quantitative research, mathematical modelling, and data visualisation, enhancing the evidence-based decision-making process across multiple sectors. Investment banking and investment funds experience in Mexico, Germany, Sweden, New York, and Australia, where his focus was on quantitative research and building complex valuation and predictive mathematical models. Throughout his career, he conducted academic research in his role as research associate professor for the University of Mexico, for ACB University in Mexico City, in the areas of investment management and quantitative modelling. His qualifications include, here we go, Bachelor of Financial Management, a Diploma of Strategic Management, a Graduate Diploma of Research Methods in Business, a Masters of Mathematical Modelling and Simulation, a Masters of Economics, and an MBA. That's it?
I don't like studying.
Okay, cool.
Hate it.
No, look, there's a bit more here. And he's a member of the Data Science Association in the USA and PMI Institute. So, welcome Aldo. I'm glad I didn't introduce myself last because I was water like an absolute goose. All right. I just want to also mention, especially with my first conversations with Aldo and Evan, obviously Rachel and Tanya, but especially with Aldo and Evan, really was about setting the standards within Brisbane of what businesses do within data. I really want to set up, I've put in there a thought leadership group. So I guess the decision makers and thought leaders within data who can influence C-suite to get them together and be able to, how can you influence the Brisbane market? Really have Brisbane being a leader, a leading city, is that right? When I say leading city in regards to what we do with data. So if you're a decision maker or at a senior level, please get in contact with Aldo or Evan. Feel free to get in contact with any of the panelists, but in regards to this thought leadership, please get in contact with Aldo or Evan through LinkedIn, or just contact me after this and I can pass on their email addresses to you. Okay. So let's get started. That was nice and quick, wasn't it? That was not too fast. All right, here we go. Tanya, Evan, Rachel, and Aldo. Let's start with the big question here. If we think about 10 years ago, companies did not have enough data or lacked access to data to gain insights or make decisions based on evidence. The amount of data we have these days should have solved these problems. However, it seems there are some organisations that still have not been able to become data-driven. Why is this? And that's a huge question. But I'll put it to Aldo first. Why is this?
Well, that's what we are trying to solve, right? I think one of the key problems is that there's a lack of understanding or what data is capable of achieving and how can be used to actually drive the whole organization based on evidence and based on data. Another thing is that I feel there's a lack of commitment with some organizations to actually get into this world of we are going to use data to drive the business. It's sort of like there's two ways, right? Like either data has become the FOMO of the corporate world where people just need to have it because they have to have it or somebody else has it. And the other way that I like to see it is that companies see data as going to a party when you don't know anyone, right? But the beer is cold, the music is good, so you want to be there, but you stay close to the door in case something goes wrong. You can just run away, right? Instead of actually going in and try to make some friends. I think that's what I would see one of the biggest problems.
Anyone's thoughts on that?
I think for me, I'm going to answer it from a different perspective and say it's kind of both sides. So I think part of the problem is from the C-suites and above, and those people that need to understand how data can be used to make those decisions and make a difference. And I think it's also from the other side. So what I've seen as well is that data people aren't necessarily great at proving their ROI. How do we do that documentation that the C-suite loves to show, hey, if you put $50,000 here, I will give you back $100,000. And I think we're getting better at it now, but I'd say moreover, we need to be better at that. And I'd say last thing on that would be this idea that somehow, as long as you have data or you have a report that shows the data, somehow that's going to lead to actions. If you don't have those business processes, you don't have that understanding of how that's going to make a difference, it's just a piece of paper. It's not necessarily going to change anything.
Yes, and I probably have a slightly different take again, although I completely
That's why
support
we
and
work
agree
so
with
well
them.
together.
And mine is that actually also companies that do already have access to data and do enable it and agree that it's necessary, there's still the issue of one, being able to articulate the problem that you want to solve with the data, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. And then I think the second is once you can articulate the problem you want to solve with the data, then how do I actually use the data to show or solve that problem that I'm trying to answer? And then I think the third thing then is, okay, I've been able to do that, then how do I communicate it effectively to others? So I think that's another angle as well that, is probably
Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I can add something to it very briefly. I have a friend who's the CEO of a logistics company. He's a crazy guy, he's great. He knows his stuff. He's been in the industry for 40, 50 years, and we sat down one day, we had a bit of chat about this, and he's like, why should I care about that? Why? He said, I've been running my trucks around this city for the last 40 years. I know all the routes, I know the back streets, I know how to get from A to B. What can data and analytics do to help me to do my job better? He said, and in fact, not just me, I know the 12 other major logistics companies across Brisbane, none of them need this data and analytics. We know where we're going to, we know where we're coming from, it's just not necessary. Now the interesting thing about that comment, if there's one industry that thrives on data and can benefit most from, it's logistics. The cancellation of trips, the routing of vehicles, everything. It is an industry that can profit from data more than any other. Yet, this individual was telling me that there is no benefit from data. He understood intuitively how to run his business, and he couldn't see a reason why it was necessary. And I think this is something very common. If you talk to C-suites across a wide variety of companies in almost any industry, they're there not because they know squat diddly about data and analytics. They're there because they're an expert in retail. They're there because they're an expert in medicine. They're there because they're an expert in travel. And that domain knowledge doesn't mean you automatically understand or know anything about data and analytics, and why should they? And so there's a journey there for them to go on and understand out of those 10 competing things in front of them, blockchain, AI, whatever you want to have there, why should this particular thing grab their attention? I think that's what's been holding back.
Okay. I mean, so we've touched on a number of things there. I think that's even touching on the FOMO as well. I think, Tanya, I might go back to you. I mean, you touched on the ROI part. Let's go back to that because let's be honest, guys. We probably can have about 50 questions. We're not going to be able to answer all of them. So we'll try and get through as much as we can. But Tanya, we went through. We touched on ROI. So what do enterprises require to enable a ROI on analytic activities? What are the minimum things an enterprise should have in place to start looking at things like ML?
Yeah, so that's a really multi-pronged question. I think the first part is obviously the proving benefit, right? So if you're trying to bring in a new system and you're trying to say bring in a new CRM or something in a system, you have to very carefully prove to the board, to the C-suite, to everyone else that the cost is going to be 10 million, but you're going to bring in 15 million and that's why you should do it, right? What I've seen for a number of years is that with data projects, there is either this answer of, oh yeah, but data projects won't bring in money, they just stop you losing money. No, we're not going to help you get any money, we're going to lose money, which isn't true. And that's part of it, being able to communicate and being able to show, actually, there is a return on investments. And to me, the only way you can do that is by lining it up with those corporate goals. So whatever those main drivers in the business are, if they've got those, they've got some nice defined metrics and measures underneath it, they know what they're aiming for, you have to very clearly show that line of sight how what you're doing is going to directly impact that and by when. And that's especially true with ML. ML has potentially lots and lots of benefits. There's lots of things you can do with it. And you guys are, know that way more than me. If you can't show how that's going to lead to an improvement in one of those key drivers of the business, it is going to be very, very hard to get that C-suite on board. To do that though, you have to have an understanding of what are those key measures, how are they measured, how are they made up. So you have to have that domain knowledge as well. That's key.
Did anyone want to add on to that?
I completely agree, and there's sometimes like the value is looking, or not the value, but the money that has to be put into new technology, new people, or upskilling the workforce. Sometimes it's looked as a cost and not as an investment.
Exactly.
So it's like, oh, I'm just spending this money and I'm probably never going to see back again. But it's definitely, like I said, an investment that is going to either generate revenue or minimize costs at some point. But the effect is not going to be like in the short term. It's not going to be like 6 or 12 months potentially to see the benefit of adding new technology, adding new data. However, it would be there again by increasing like operational efficiency or automating some processes, or being able to create something different that would satisfy needs from the changing market or from the existing clients and new clients.
I'll go on to a different question then, further on to that. Rachel, I might ask this one of you, just going off from what Al just said. So how can we help executives understand the value of data? And if they do, then how do you help executives extract value from data?
Very good question. So I think one of the key things would be about being selective, first of all. So if we want to first talk from the perspective of providing data to the C-suite, I think it's about being selective and ensuring that we use the right type of information that they are going to get value from, and I think that's one thing. I think secondly, it's about actually good, clear communication, helping them to understand the benefits of visualising the data, the benefits of being able to communicate it clearly, as I've already talked about before, and you're just bringing them along on the journey and getting them to completely support that, so that then they can actually feed that back down to the people below them. So, the rest of that question again? Sorry, I kind of lost track of it.
That's okay. Okay, so how can you help executives understand the value of data? And if they do, then how do you help executives extract value from data?
So I think the second thing is actually about making sure, or understanding that the C-suite are generally time poor. They don't want to be digging and diving and looking for information out of data. It's essential that you get in and understand what they need from the data, and then go back and find ways to get it to them quickly and easily, and clearly. And I think like being careful about the delivery methods that you use, understanding that the dashboard's not necessarily the answer for them. Being careful about the story that you use with it, helping them to have a story that they can tell others, so that they can, be impressive, I guess, is part of what they need to do too. So, yeah, I think that's probably, does that answer?
Yeah. Evan, did you want to add on to that?
I mean, I can add something to that. Again, referring back to my friend in the logistics industry, I think if I can talk in his language and about data, and help him understand his language, then he'll be able to see its value. And one thing to about his language is an asset. Data's an asset, just like your truck's an asset over there. And so I give you a really concrete example to show you how data is an asset. You now have 5 trucks that deliver to your 15 customers, and you do a pretty crappy job of it. You think you know the roads, but you actually don't. Because I'm going to take your 5 trucks and I'm going to now deliver to 25 customers. You know what that would have cost you if you'd done it in your method? It would have cost you 2 extra trucks. Tell me the cost of 2 extra trucks. Now I'm going to tell you, by investing in that data, it's half that, and you're now serving 25 customers. And by talking in his language around how data is an asset and how it can be converted into trucks and what the cost of those trucks would be, all of a sudden now I'm talking his language.
Exactly.
Did you want to add on to that, Tanya?
I 100% agree. But
Okay.
I think what I've seen with C-suite though is sometimes, and I'm sure your friend, because you guys have a different relationship, it's a bit different. With the C-suite though, if you come at it and if you just say it quite bluntly, sometimes it's really hard to get them on board. So a lot of the times it's easier to show them, right? It's that showing them in kind of their language is what works for them, rather than just going, you know what, I can do this, you'll see, done. It doesn't often work sometimes.
There's something quite interesting that you were mentioning, Rachel, about the dashboards, right? It's very common that the executive or C-suite level people just get a person from like data scientist or data analytics person. They say like, I want a dashboard. I need a dashboard to see it on my office, and they even get like these fancy, big, massive TV just to consistently look at the dashboard. And I've seen that many times, but that is not going to solve the problem. And they just get the dashboard and they think like, oh, now my problems are going to be solved. But surprise, it's not. And the way that they can see that there's actually value is not by getting the dashboard, because they don't need data. They potentially don't need the dashboard. What they need is just actions. It's just something that they need to do, and they have to look at how to use data for external purposes, but also for internal purposes. Because if they are not analyzing or looking at what's happening internally and how they can reduce costs, they also sometimes just focusing on give me external data like sales, what is driving the market, this and that, but they are not looking at what's happening internally. So that's another way of putting or adding that bit of value, so to say. And there's a piece of the narrative. Sorry, I'm stealing that. There's also like the narrative piece and how it's presented. And back to your point that it's a two-way thing, right? What we have seen, and we have just sort of like try a little bit different, is trying to explain data or data analytics without the word data and without the word analytics. Because that's usually the most common thing. Like, what do? I analyze data. What does that mean? I just get a lot of data. And so, right? But if it's explained to them, like what we do is just solving problems, and we solve problems that you might not be seeing because they are either more complex or they require a little bit more of digging or more definition of the problem. And second, to your point as well, Rachel, that the problems are sometimes not clearly defined. So just getting on that understanding that we need to define the problem. Just give me the problem, and I'm going to give you the action. I'm going to give you what I think as the specialist or the expert, what I think is going to solve actually your problem, not just a dashboard again.
Okay. We'll touch on something slightly there. I mean, you know, they understand what data is and you know what you guys actually do. So we'll go back into it. So how difficult does the hype, I guess you used the word promo before, but how difficult does the hype around what data, analytics, AI make on your job? Because we all know a lot of businesses, that's why we're all here, a lot of businesses don't understand. I'm not going to pretend, I'm an accountant by trade, I don't understand what it means. But you know, how difficult does this hype make your jobs at the moment, especially during COVID when everyone wants it right now? Aldo, we'll start with you then.
I think what happens is that there's this expectation that data is going to solve absolutely every problem. It's like if I need to solve whatever it is, or if I need to get better in whatever, I just need data. And well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, data can get really wrong. I mean, there's proof of many things like that. Even if we think about AI and just trying to get into facial recognition and all what has happened when the color of the skin is different, and it's just start like getting into like a very horrible dilemma when there's a lot of people getting offended, right, because of that. So it can go wrong, and when it gets wrong, it's really wrong. So this I think that's one of the biggest issues, that there's this misalignment of expectations of what data can achieve.
Rachel, you come from a slightly different industry, Aldo's more management consulting, especially with health and also your private practice, but also with Marta Health. I mean, how has that hype affected you? Because you guys seem to be championing data at the moment. Am I right?
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the challenge is that I think doctors particularly are worried that we'll expect this data to replace their own common sense, and I think that there's often a lot of reticence then to share their data, which we still have, especially the private practice side of things, that real reticence of sharing data to help, you know, because there's such an opportunity if we could just analyse cause and and understand all the different nuances of patients and the end outcomes. It's such an opportunity, which that's something that really gets me excited. But it's very hard to actually get hold of that data and get it supported by doctors, just because they're worried that we'll then go and say, now you have to make your decisions based on this, rather than using your own common sense. So it's pointing to really what you were saying, I think, as well, Aldo. I think we've got to be a little bit careful to keep a balanced viewpoint in the way that we talk about data and in the way that we use data and the expectations we have of the people that use it. And I think we should be communicating that as data specialists. So, yeah.
Evan, when businesses seek out your business, when you talk about data, how's BRE reacted to it? There's all this hype going on.
It's a good question. And again, sorry to keep going back to this example, but talking again about my
I
friend.
feel like I know him now.
Yeah. Talking about my friend in the logistics industry. Sorry?
We need to know the guy.
John. His name's John.
You know John, isn't it? It's John.
John Smith.
Is he at the back? Yeah,
Oh, his name actually genuinely is John. And we had exactly this conversation around what AI can or can't do. That was part of the discussion, because he was like just challenging me. This is all part of a long conversation. He was just challenging me. Like, what can we really do? Come on, you're the AI guru, give me something. And he just wanted to try and shoot down everything I could say. And so he said, all right, AI, I saw this thing in AWS, you can build this solution in a couple of weeks, bam, it's done. Come in here, I'll give you 2 weeks to sort it out. I said, yep, we can do something in 2 weeks. I assume then your data's in a perfect shape. You have everything ready for me to model with. You've cleaned it all up. You've got it in one location. He said, absolutely. Pulls out this clipboard, puts it on the table, all his orders. He said, all my orders are here. They're all one after the other. You can see them right here. Start with that.
Wow. Okay. So what did you tell him? Yeah.
The next beer's on him.
Yes. Okay, so that takes us into, I guess, the next there. Tanya, I'm going to start with you on this one. Let me just find it, because I don't know if I've actually got it in here, but is the expectation of data specialists, is it unrealistic from businesses, from organisations?
Yes and no. So absolutely, I think it can be. So they can just expect, especially with the perspective of what kind of data you need to do anything cool with it. Spreadsheets, 50-50, clipboards, shit. There's a limit, right? So you have to understand, what do I have to make this viable and to make this work? And I think the other side of that expectation is, what are you trying to achieve? So I've seen a couple of corporate strategies now for big businesses, proper top of the food chain corporate strategies that just say, this year we will adopt ML. Why? What? And so the problem is, they then engage amazing people like Aldo and Evan and go, we just need some ML. Okay, what do you need? How are you going to do that? You're set up to fail. How are you supposed to succeed with that? Because you don't know where you're supposed to be going. You don't know what you're supposed to be doing. They have these expectations that, as you said, you're going to have whatever data, it's fine, 2 weeks, done, then. Or they're going to have this expectation, like you said before, that somehow having a report will change the outcome. A report can't change an outcome. There has to be actions. So yeah, I think there is certainly a lot of that, and I think you're seeing it change over time, but it's still definitely there.
I mean, from my point of view, obviously I speak to data specialists every day, and especially leaders, and I guess the difference is why we're all here is there's so many levels of businesses are at so many different stages. Some are really championing data and some aren't. Rachel, I'll go to you on this because you're doing some consulting as well, but what is it, I guess what is the biggest struggle in getting businesses to understand what data is and implementing it?
I think actually it's that disconnect, because I think quite often they don't realise that every activity that they're doing is actually generating a line of data, and they forget that that data actually represents real business activity. And therefore the insights that they're getting out of it are actually reflecting real business information. And I think sometimes there's that kind of disconnect, even for analysts. I think it's the same. So sometimes analysts are like, yeah, well, I'm just looking at data, I've got loads of data here, but they're not really getting in and understanding that there's actually some business activity here, there's some real business knowledge here, and there's kind of, I think business, so there's data literacy, but there's also business literacy, and I think there's that need for both to come together to, you know, really get that value, if you like, and use it effectively. And that's, I think, the disconnect that is there.
Anyone want to add on to that?
I would say that it's also not only getting the data, because the data per se isn't going to do anything. So it has to be like a really comprehensive approach, a full holistic approach, where you have the right people to analyze the data. You have the right technology that is required for serve the purpose of that data is supposed to be served. Right? You need the right processes to get, of course, the beginning to an end. So we start with the problem definition and finishes with the action. But also important, you need the governance. So you need to have that quality assurance that the data is correct, that has been collected in a good manner, that it's clean, that it can be a process replicable, that can be, run multiple times and not having different outcomes every time.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, here's the question then. Okay, so say we go to a company, they want to get into data, they know they want to go, oh cool, I want to be a part of the club. Where do they start? What would you advise them? Because it's like, do we just bring on a team of 10 people, or is it we've got to start from somewhere? Because it can mean a lot.
You tell them to call John so that they can tell you.
John's got his clipboard coming out. Evan, I'll direct that question at you. Where does a company start?
Yeah, they don't start by asking that question.
Okay. What question?
That's the first mistake. They first start exactly like Rachel was saying in understanding their business problems.
Yep.
And they begin from the business problem, and they understand the value that solving a particular business problem could have. If it so happens that data and analytics are the way to solve that, fantastic. If not, there could be a different methodology. It could be buying a new truck. That could be the answer. But it's exactly like you were saying before, Aldo, I think, in that data analytics needs to disappear. It's almost like, doesn't matter what I'm doing here behind my back with this magical black box. You got this problem I'm solving. It's nice to perhaps open that up and reveal a bit of it so they can intuitively understand what's going on and realize, well, it's not black magic, but in 2 months after we launch it, it's going to fall over. There's something of substance behind it and building that credibility. But really, it's a business problem, and I just need a solution. And in fact, the bigger picture here anyway is what we're saying more than anything is make better decisions. That's what we're saying. And that way to make good decisions is driven by data. Is really what we're saying. And the way to drive by data is trying to quantify what you're saying. In fact, George Danzig, he was the inventor of so-called LP programming technique. So he invented as part of that the simplex algorithm, which is a methodology to solve these complex optimization problems. He's a luminary. In the field of mathematics, he's huge. Everyone knows him. And someone asked him one day, what do you see as your biggest achievement? Did you ever achieve in your life? You've created this simplex algorithm, you've changed the field of mathematical optimization forever, you've achieved all these awards, you've published these top tier papers. What is it? He said, I've done one thing that's amazing. I've forced managers to define quantitatively what the hell they want.
Okay. How do you do it? Wow, okay. Is there an easy way to do that?
Me?
Yeah.
Look, I think there is. And I think there's this awesome book that if you haven't read, I'd highly recommend everyone reads it. It's How to Measure Anything. And the book really goes into detail around challenges people have in measuring. And this is really our question, what we're doing here. And it challenges the C-suite and executives who in a situation would try and base it on intuition, a decision on intuition, or try and say, look, there's no way we could ever figure out what the cost benefit of this decision is. We're just going to make it. It's too important. It's our brand. It's our people. It's our this. You can never quantify that. And what he challenges the C-suite to do is to actually quantify it and put the effort in to make that decision and try and gather data on it, no matter how difficult to do that. And so that's what I think part of it is it's potentially a mindset to realize that although a lot of these concepts seem quite vague and ambiguous and amorphous, actually if you put some effort in defining what the hell you mean, so for example, we want to improve our brand, what does that really mean? Well, it can be translated to the fact that more customers pick our product over our competitors' products. It can be translated into better awareness when we do surveys and ask people which brands you're aware of, and these other things that we can truly measure. And then that translates back to the fact that we can quantify these decisions now. And by being able to do that, and by being able to solve that mindset, you can actually define your business problems in a measurable and tangible way, would be the first step that they could take to saying, actually, here's where data and analytics can play a big role.
I might add something to that actually. It's just adding to what you're saying. I think the key thing is that often the C-suite of many organisations aren't immediately able to articulate what the strategy is. And if they can't articulate the strategy, then they can't tell you what they need to measure. And if they can't tell you what they need to measure, then you're just going to be losing a fighting battle to actually get the data that they need or want, because they actually don't know. So I think it's really important that they first understand what their strategy is before they're trying to get these KPIs to measure, because KPIs need to reflect the business strategy. So just adding to
Yeah, that's completely correct. And I think just to add to that, people hold these CEOs and these board members in high regard. A lot of who I've met are absolutely mediocre individuals. Absolutely mediocre individuals that have actually gotten there because they know how to play politics.
Yeah.
Not because they have any competency within their chosen field or know anything about data and analytics. And so it's no wonder that when it comes to formulating a strategy and defining what it means, they have no capability to break that down to anything that's truly actionable beyond the layer below them, who hopefully is intelligent enough to translate that into what the organisation should do.
I have worked in a big company before though that, had 400 employees kind of thing, so it wasn't massive, but it was big. And we had a CEO who was like that, and he knew what he knew and he knew what he didn't know, right? And he was an amazing talker, and I think that's how he got the job, because he was such a confident talker and so good at putting it across. The good thing about him though was he knew, again, what he didn't know. So he knew that he wasn't really capable of going, all right, this is what we need to do, these are the 5 things that are going to show us how we get there, this is how we want to do it. So we built up a really good relationship with him in the analytics team, and he would come to us and go, I just really want, this year, I really want to beat this competitor. Or I really want to do this. I think that's where we need to go. And he had that kind of acumen on the basics of his industry. So he knew kind of from an industry level where he wanted to go. So the good thing was we built up that relationship of trust, which is so key, that we could go, all right, so you're saying you want to get, X number of new people. You want to get an extra 20,000 people. All right. We would go back and go, where do those 20,000 people come from? Where have they come from the last 10 years? Where, what's all the context? And it's being able to connect that business context, industry context, acumen with the data and analytics and how we can do it. So I don't think the C-suite should have to know how to measure. I don't think they should have to go down. I think if we're good at what we do and we build up that relationship of trust, as long as they can come to us and go, Evan, show me how to do this. I want to know that I'm successful. That should be up to us to go, all right, your key drivers are these 5 things. The way that I would measure them is exactly like this. Let's go. Yeah, I don't know that we should expect to really be able to articulate it too well, because certainly I've not seen it. I'm sure there are some that are amazing at it. I've not seen too many of them, what you were saying.
Yes, I think what you're saying is us as analysts
Yes.
need to be more than just data specialists.
Absolutely.
And actually, I would agree there. Make sure you know your business inside out, know it really well, because that's how you
Correct.
become business literate as well as public.
Be curious, understand your industry, understand your business, understand your key players at the top, what matters to them. If you don't have that curiosity, it's going to be hard.
Well, moving on from that then, and say the C-suite knows what they want, and that's your specialty, you're finding it out for them. So then how important is storytelling of data? Because obviously that's what's going to get them over the line a lot of the times is, tell me what I need to hear. So how important is it?
Storytelling feels like you.
Yeah, that's very true.
Look, I think the thing is that people don't take actions unless they're emotively charged to take an action. Right? And I watched a really great change video a while back, and it was of the elephant and the rider. And I can't remember, unfortunately, the guy that actually talks about it, but it is a principle that he's talked about where you have the elephant, which is your emotions and the heavy side, and then you have the rider, who is your logic. And quite often we think logically we should do something like trying to give up sugar, for example. We know we should give up sugar, it's not good for us, right? But the elephant is saying, no, I really want that sugar, so I'm going to have it. And what you're actually needing to do is communicate to that elephant the need to do whatever action is needed, so that the rider and the elephant can go along that journey together. And that's apart from all the other change aspects that are necessary for that, like making the road smoother, etc. But there's still that real need to be able to engage your audience and get them interested in what you want them to know. And only the best way to do that is through storytelling. Storytelling has been proven. So when you're thinking through something, the neural pathways in your brain, and I'm not a neurologist, so I'm not going to be able to tell you technically how it all works. But the fact of the matter is that when you tell a story, you and the person who's listening to you both have the same neural pathway activity, and I think that that's a really, really important point, and I think a key reason for storytelling.
Aldo, do you want to add on to that?
Oh, I think that by telling the whole story, you just give the background on whatever happened. So you just start connecting, like this is what happened, and you start building from there, like what is going to be the future and what it's going to look like. If we see it from a technical perspective, you can start thinking about the leader lag indicators and just starting to move from a descriptive analytics to a predictive and prescriptive analytics, which is just how you connect it. You just forget about all the technical parts and you just tell it like in simple ways that people would understand and would say like, okay, I see where we're coming from. Now I can picture where we are heading, or where we're going. That's what the importance of storytelling is, in my view, my opinion.
I mean, now we're moving into the conversation more into businesses who do appreciate data and maybe have an idea of them. So let's change the conversation slightly. So if data is being used effectively in an organisation, is there a need to upskill our workforce with data and business literacy skills? And how can we do this? Because that's a big issue moving forward. So how do we do this? Tanya, you're nodding your head, so I'm going to go to you.
So yes, there is absolutely a need to upskill them, and upskill them within the remit of what they need or what they're curious about, right? So again, you're not going to get the C-suite to understand how you've done a predictive model, right? They don't need to understand the level that you do, but they do need to understand. So what you find as well with that maturity that you were talking about before is as that maturity goes up, the questions that they ask change. So they go from saying, I just want 5 numbers on a spreadsheet to I want a dashboard that I can find the linkages and drill into. And then they go from there and go, okay, so I just need you to tell me why the answer is X. They have to understand the basics of how to be curious about data and how to look into it and how to ask those questions for themselves and how to self-serve. Because otherwise that curiosity can never be fed, and therefore they don't get more and more curious and they're not able to action it quickly. So unless you've got a massive team of analysts, which is almost as big as your business, as soon as that curiosity hits and people want to know and they want to ask and they want to make data-driven decisions, you aren't going to have enough analysts. You know, so you either need to teach your business to go, all right, how can I do at least 80%, 60%, whatever of this on my own, and then come to you and say, that was fantastic, but now what? What else can I do? You have to do it. The how to do it, it depends 100% on the industry, and I'm sure Rachel's probably got lots of experience in how she's done that in different areas. But I think again, it depends on the business.
Evan.
Me?
Yes.
Me.
You're dozing off. No, I want to hear more about John. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think it's an interesting question. Let's just ask let's run a simple thought experiment. Let's say I come out of uni and I haven't worked in any industry yet. I've only got my university knowledge and that experience, and I've decided I'm going to start a career in retail. So I walk into this retail organisation, I know nothing about retail. Imagine the situation that they don't bother ever to teach me anything about retail. I'm supposed to operate in this organisation in a vacuum knowing nothing about retail. I think that's the analogy that we have here. And I think if we look at organisations that have been highly successful in the knowledge industry, so we look at the Googles, the AWSs and all these other big companies, Gore-Tex and other ones that have built their career on knowledge industries, one of the key attributes that you see these organizations have is the ability to leverage the capability of highly capable individuals in their organization. And one of those key aspects around that is a level of autonomy. So people can use their knowledge and use their skills and drive important actions within the business. And I think that's almost like that data and analytics aspect of this question, where we can see that by upskilling and getting people with these skills, they have this ability to make good decisions, which is back to where my original point around data and analytics. You have now these individuals across the business that can make good decisions for your companies. They know how and where to go to get that information to make that decision. They can partially do that analysis. They can look at a question and they go, all right, what's our projected sales for the next coming year? And someone walks in and says, well, it's 50 trillion. And they go, yep, sounds good. All right, keep moving. And they lack data literacy because their common sense should have kicked in and said, that's ridiculous. And by having that kind of common sense, that ability around data, you're empowering them to be able to make better decisions up and down the organization at all layers. So I think if you want to be one of those great success stories that we're seeing everywhere, by empowering people with that data and that ability to make those decisions, and around that is data literacy, analytics literacy, and these other things, combined with their knowledge of the industry, it'll just be another tool in their toolkit that can help them operate effectively.
Alan, did you want to touch on that?
I completely agree. So you don't hire a painter to build a car. I mean, I don't think that would work, right? So you should not hire like an analytics person, as with any other profession, just to tell them what you do if you're not the expert on that field. It just doesn't make absolutely any sense. And that goes to the point of the autonomy. And it's also getting that understanding that this person are doing something really beneficial for the organization at a point where it just keep happening and grows organically until the organization has that data as a culture. And from there, it's just everything's going to keep on flowing in a good direction, because there's that understanding, that intellectual curiosity of keep asking more and more questions, even if they don't seem to be that relevant, right? It's just like half of the knowledge is created by asking the right question, and sometimes it's not even the right question. It's just asking something that triggers, kickstarts the discussion, and eventually gets to the problem that can be solved.
I mean, I think I know the answers to this one already, but a common misconception is just touching on that already. But a common misconception is that data scientists are software engineers and should be able to build production-ready code. Do you think this is real?
That happens, unfortunately. Yeah, and it's just like you can even see in some of the job descriptions that are out there, right? We need an analytics person that can clean data, transform data, build a code, build a database, do some funky dance moves, and it's just like, it's just too much. It's not going to happen. You have to start like understanding, or companies need to start understanding that there's people for different bits of the role. There's going to be people that are going to be in charge of the database. There's going to be people that are going to do that really amazing code, and then you have the people that are going to be the link between the technical aspect of people writing this amazing coding and the people that can translate that into a business language, in fact, the other way.
Have you found that that's quite common around here in Brisbane, Rachel?
I don't know so much about Brisbane, but it certainly was common 20 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
I had a scenario where when I was working in London, and it's actually the reverse of what you actually said, because in this case what happened was there was nobody really who knew how to do analytics at that time. And I remember setting up an analytics team there, and I was actually given a team in India to do the work. And the whole team was software engineers or website developers. And I had to talk them through and teach them every little piece of code and help them to understand how to query SQL and all of those sort of things. It's just kind of really a highlight of the fact that you can't just put people from one sort of field and expect them to know another field. It's impossible. They need to start to learn and grow in that field. And I guess we hoped that they would learn and develop. These particular people didn't. It wasn't really something they had a knack for. It's just we had the wrong people for data analytics. But yeah.
So I'm touched on that then. Is there a specific area or C-suite that data analytics should report into, or is it just dependent on company? Because you can get a million different answers to this one, and people are very adamant where data should be sitting. I actually might put this one out to everyone on this one, because What are your thoughts? Should it be in one area or is it just dependent? Evan, we'll start with you on this one. Where should data analytics be? And then obviously not behind your back at the moment, but in regards to who should it report into?
Yeah. My question back says, where is the data? So if you're a large enterprise, or if you work in a company, let's say in a small company, where is your data? Typically your data comes from operational systems. So as we mentioned before, CRM, a customer relationship management system, or you could have an SAP to run your finance and your HR and things. Where is your data? Wherever that data lives, whoever's using that system will understand it, and will understand it very well. So it wouldn't make sense for me to go down to the HR team and say, hey, HR team, all your fantastic data and the responsibility for that data now sits over there. You have no responsibility for this data anymore. So just enter garbage into that field. So that person's name, Evan, call him Bobbledy Bob. We'll see how well the data team down here works with Bobbledy Bob, because they're going to have a great time mucking around with your data. So I don't think there's a simple one person should own it, that whole function. I think there's a level of a data awareness and strategy that exists within this space. And it would be, if you're going to use that data for purposes that could be potentially across the organization or even within a specific silo, there needs to be some form of data stewardship, some sort of data ownership, so that what we can actually get into the company is of a decent quality. And so that then kind of says, at least at the data level, I'm not sure about the analytics level, but at least at the data level, it feels like that it should be spread across the organisation.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually what I'm going to say would exactly mirror what you're saying. I think that we often, we expect data analysts to know everything around the business. I think we need to have a very small core set of people. And where should they report? Well, that's always a political conversation. Mm-hmm. But it shouldn't be a large set. It should be a reasonably core set that are the enablers. They help the business know how to get the data easily. They help them create that integration, make sure that the data flows smoothly to where it needs to get to, and helps provide the tools that are needed for things like your data dictionaries, which still should be managed by the business, by the way. And instead, so I think there should be a small set. Should they report into IT? Should they report into the business? Well, that's a political conversation that perhaps doesn't need to be had here. But
do it. That's good. Let's make it real controversial. Tanya, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think over the last probably 15 years or so, and even longer than that, we've all seen changes, right? So I've sat under finance, I've sat under operations, I've sat under marketing, I've sat under the C-suite. It completely depends on the organisational structure, and I think it depends on who's got the most appetite at the time. Is certainly what I've seen. So which part of the business creates the most data or uses it the most is where it has sat. I think the key is exactly what Evan said though. It matters less where it sits. It matters more about the strategy, the structures, the governance and everything around it as well. I think that is far more important. I do think that there does need to be a strong dotted line to a C-suite person who isn't necessarily biased, and I say that risking saying the wrong thing, but if you look at CMOs, for example, you look at CFOs, you look at those roles, they do sometimes have very specific bents on what needs to be done. And marketing is a really great example of that. Sitting under a marketing team, what I have seen before, for example, is they hired 2 data scientists who are incredible data scientists, very good backgrounds, and they said, look, you just completely report for us. I want you to do these tiny little things here. The models that they were told to build effectively had no business value because of the fact that to marketing were like, well, this really matters to us. We need to show that we're ahead. We need to show that we're doing this. We need to show this is important to us. But the models that they built, okay, so what are you going to do with it now? Well, it doesn't change anything. We're still going to talk to all of these different people, but now we know which ones of those are more likely to be effective. So it's not actually changing anything though. You're not getting less costs. You're not increasing revenue. Yeah, but we can show that we're using our data the best. So if you've got one area of the business that is trying to prove something or that is trying to silo it, that is the concern. But really, it doesn't matter so much as long as you have that governance, you have that strategy, you have that structure across the organisation. Because data is an organisational asset. I don't believe it's a team asset. Aldo, you're up.
I don't know what else to
I
say.
mean, it's got to be original. If it's not original, then just cut them off. Just hand to the other panelists.
It's like the island. You're getting voted off, mate. Come on.
You've got to zoom to someone
No
else.
pressure.
I think it
And
would
it's got to be witty and humorous as well, okay?
No pressure.
Yeah.
And a dance at the end. Come on. Here we go.
Can I do the dance at the beginning?
Okay, you can. Why you think?
No, I think it would be ideally, or like the ideal scenario, what I could wish for is that every unit or every business unit or every team understands that they need to own the data and use the data. Because if the data is centralized wherever, there's not going to be that actual knowledge to interrogate the data in the most efficient way. Like marketing is not going to know how to use finance data and things like that. So it's going back to what I was saying of embedding it in the culture and having that culture of data and analysis and the intellectual curiosity and asking the questions. If it's in every single part of the organization, then they're going to use the data for the in a most effective manner because they have the understanding or the expertise to interrogate the data.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Was that original? You know?
This is, yes, unbelievable. We'll talk about culture, we'll talk about behavioural change. Okay. In many organisations, data is still not a well-used asset. We've been through this, but significant behavioural change is required for this change to take place. We have touched on it, I know, but I just want to go back to it. What steps would you take to create this change? Okay, I'm going to look at you out there. You can do the original answer.
You can do your dance now. You can start with that.
I'm setting it for the absolute final. It gets back to the point of literacy and I'm starting to think that, or after what you said, that it's just both ways. It's definitely the way that the people that have the knowledge has to start educating the people that doesn't have, and that works for absolutely everything, not just startup. But it's not just achieving that, it's just how is that going to be done in a way that the message is clear and understandable. It's hard, it's challenging, it's also changing extremely fast. So organization has to stop playing the catch-up game and have to actually start and moving together with that change. So that's really the way of doing that. How we can do that, I have absolutely no idea, because that's exactly the problem in what we are discussing here. But
Exactly. Can you actually give an answer to this? Rachel, are we able to answer this question? Where do we start?
Look, I don't think it's completely answerable either, but awareness is probably where I would start.
Yep.
Raising awareness in the organisation of the needs for data, the way that you can use it, the benefits of it. I think it needs to start from the top and to get the support of the C-suite and leadership to actually agree. And I think you need to sort of formulate a strategy to begin that sort of process. That's, I guess, where I would start, is where I have started.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there begin to do things like innovation jams, where you bring people in to query data, to look at it, you then begin to do, I don't know, videos, trainings, different things to bring people in. That's the way we're doing it. It seems to be working, but it's a little bit at the moment still like throwing pebbles back into the sea. Eventually I'm hoping we will get a mass sort of movement, and we'll begin to get more and more people engaging.
I think the one thing that I'd like to say about this is that evolution only happens by necessity. Growth doesn't happen if there isn't a need for it. Things don't evolve, they don't change if they don't have to. If you can't explain the why, and you can't explain the why to the people who you're trying to talk to, you will never get anywhere. You know, and you have to be passionate. You know, I think it's one of the most important things is there are some, you know, if you go to someone and be like, oh, I really think you should do this, I think it's got lots of value, it's going to be really good, are you going to listen to me? Whereas if I come to you and say, hey, I've got an idea, let's talk about it, this is what I've done, I think it'd be really interesting to you, this is how it's going to provide value to you, this is how it's going to matter to you, let's chat. If I approach you with the facts and I understand your position and I come to it with passion and excitement, you're much more likely to listen to me. So I think it's a presentation thing as much as it is anything else.
Evan, anything that top that one up? Doesn't have to be original.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
to
have
be
a
original,
PhD in
doesn't it?
mathematics, not change management. So
Yeah.
I'm struggling here with this one.
You're out there.
We have, we have sometimes try like a very risky approach, and sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. If we are engaged by a client to do a particular project and we already have the data, we just get it like a little bit more than what is required, and maybe just put a dashboard. I know it's just like, again, going back to the dashboard is not going to solve anything, but at least they are seeing the data in a visual manner, and probably they have never seen it like that. And now when I say it's risky, it's because there's time that it's invested trying to show something, because you can try to talk about something and people might just listen, but maybe not having the clear picture in their minds. But if they see it, it's just like, oh, I like that. How did you do that? How can I have more of that?
And even more risky than that, one thing I've seen that's worked as well along those lines is if you have a really difficult stakeholder who just doesn't agree, doesn't want to hear, has very structured and this is all I need from you, what I have seen done before as well is, okay, here's what you said. Hey, bonus, I've also done what I think is the right way of doing it. This is what I think will work. This is the reason why. You've got both of them now. I've done what you've asked. Be free. Try it. Let me know what you think. And a lot of the time that gets them on board too, because you're not breaking that relationship of trust by not listening to them and not doing what they want and not showing value. But you're also going, hey, I got this. This is a really good way of doing it too. Have a look at it.
We have 5 more minutes till we'll put it out to the Q&A, so I'm going to put this onto the 4 of you. I mean, the topic for this was that what do businesses require to unlock data's full potential? The 4 of you really wanted to get a message out there. And do you have any questions to ask of each other, or is there an actual something that you want to tell the people of the world out here what your thoughts are of how they do that? Evan, I'm going to start with you, mate.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know you're looking away from me. Go on.
I was just dodging the views. Look, I think it's going back to what I said initially. We've discussed this many times, so I don't know how much extra value to add saying it, but it's really looking around that kind of business problem and understanding the challenges facing the business, and then using it to address that one, and tapping in and showing the value of data by solving in particular problems that couldn't be solved any other way. I think with technology and these other things that people become technophiles, it's because they see something like VR or they see something like Bitcoin solving a problem that could never be solved before. At least if it was solved really poorly. And so I think being able to not just solve that business problem, but solve a business problem that just was untouchable previously could help educate people and see the full potential of data and the value that it can create. But it's kind of, the answer to this question is the answer to all the questions we've had tonight, almost, I'd say.
Yeah. Rachel?
Look, I think it's also understanding, when you're given an analytics project, it's about getting in there and doing the full end of the project, not just doing the, I use an analogy, I wish I could put it up as a photograph, I think I might have shown you it. It's a photograph of a toilet, and it's got a wall halfway through the toilet, and you can't actually use the toilet because it's not able to be opened, right? And it's just poorly designed, in my opinion. If they had have done the research piece of things and actually understood what was needed, and not just from the one person that requested it, but from the users and the stakeholders all around, then they would perhaps be able to know that a half a toilet is not going to serve the job. And then perhaps if they did the other side, which is not the fun bit, but the change management aspect and ensuring that it's actually getting released in the right way, there would be the right testing and things that go on, then they would also know that toilet wouldn't work in that frame and shape. So I think it's to kind of make everything that you're doing useful in data analytics, you need to do all of the pieces, understanding the processes that it fits within, understanding what the actual requirement is and how it will best serve the need. It's the whole flow. It's not just doing the little development that you're given and delivering it. And if you can sort of get that whole gamut of that, I think you'll win more people over and help them understand the value and the benefits. So.
Yeah.
I think I agree. It's tying it back to strategy, it's tying it back to business acumen, it's tying it back to commercial needs, it's tying it back to problem statements. And I think another thing that is really key as well is just because you've delivered a solution now and it may be perfect and amazing, don't be afraid to relook at it, right? Because a lot of the times when things change, you need to tailor that solution. You need to come up with a new solution. So I worked in a company a long time ago where we created this amazing dashboard that showed every month the amount of money we had coming from a certain thing. And every month people would look at it and be like, yes, this is, exactly what we want to see. This is another month, this is another month. It gets to a point where everyone's seen that for a full year, right? It's never really that different. It still is what it is. People stop looking at it. People stop caring. Flip it on its head. When is it not like that? When are things different? And so what we did from that, we took that dashboard and took that pointless number that never changed. So again, looking at a dashboard never changes it. Flipped it on its head, created some pretty cool decision trees and a whole bunch of other stuff under it, and said, all right, so now what we can tell you is we can give you a 3-month window of when something's about to change from those numbers. We can see when something fundamentally in one of our competitors is changing. We can tell you before it's an issue. We can tell you what to do about it. And we can tell you what to do to those people to fix it. It makes that exact same data completely more useful, and we're getting in line with the maturity of the business. And we did that because a solution that was amazing at one point in time was no longer fit for purpose because our maturity had increased. You have to increase, you have to not be afraid to throw away something you've done before and do something new. Your turn.
Original.
Curiosity.
Yes!
I would go with curiosity. And the reason why is because that would trigger like asking questions. And the more questions that we ask, the more we are going to start trying to solve those and getting to like even like a research scientific method where we need to at some point collect data to answer that question, right? Because it's not going to be answered of course it depends on how you ask the question. If it's a yes no answer question, then it's not going to go anywhere. But it's exactly what we were saying about like that intellectual curiosity and ask the question. Eventually that's going to lead to having to collect data. It's going to lead to be better at the process, collecting better data, analyzing the data in a better way, getting better solutions and better actions. And that will just drive the whole change.
And just to build on that curiosity point, Aldo, I guess that's a bit what Brian was referring to at the beginning, what we were trying to do a little bit here in Brisbane, in that me and Al have been trying to push something where we're trying to create that curiosity and as part of it, create that education where we're kind of keen and interested in, as you mentioned, people to reach out to us if that's a thing around that education and curiosity. We're trying to push that agenda a little bit.
All right, thank you. Let's move it on to the Q&A. Does anyone have a question for the panel?
Be nice.
Yeah, be nice.
Be nice.
I can start. What is your greatest date story?
Jesus.
I could start with one. When I was a little kid, back in high school, I used to work out way too much. So I thought as a young male full of testosterone that all I need to do is just get pumped up, my upper body, and just get massive, and that would do everything. That would be life's solution to every single problem I had, everything from money to grades, everything. Just get pumped, right, really big. And this is the first ever data thing I did, and I think in hindsight it was great. Where what I do is I worked out way too much, and I couldn't figure out what the problem was, why I couldn't do something all the time. So I started creating a graph, and I started collecting data on two things. One was how I felt, and I had a scale of like low, medium, and high. And one of them was my strength level. So I'd do maybe a few chin-ups and see how many it was, and that would measure my strength. And it gave me a fascinating insight between how I felt and my strength level. And what was really awesome about this was it kind of broke this conception I had in my mind that if I felt great, I'd be strong. And then I could see these cycles going out of sync, and it's probably my greatest ever data story, because what it did is it gave me knowledge and an insight about something that I just believed was a certain way. It broke it down to really help inform the decision. It broke kind of a misconception or a preconception I had that was completely wrong. And so it was a great little story that I had, and helped me understand the value of data, I guess, from a bit of a younger age. Anyway, that's my greatest data story.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
Anyone else got a great data story?
Not one to match that.
Okay. We'll move to the next sentence. We'll move on to the next question. Anyone? Alex, we'll come to you after this.
We've talked about like being enthusiastic and curious. I'm wondering, like, what areas are you like enthusiastic or curious about at the moment? Whether it's like new technologies or new applications, like what's getting your geek muscles pumped?
So I can answer that one if you want first. Actually, for me, it's not the technology; it's actually people. Understanding how people think, and that's for me. I find that extremely interesting now. I'm trying to understand how I can best reach the heart and mind of people to become more data literate, and so I think that's for me a very passionate thing at the moment. Yeah.
I'm getting really passionate about like data because that's what I do every day, but more like trying to push that message and make deliver in a way that people can understand in an easy way that I'm not, especially people that are not technical, that doesn't have this data analytics knowledge. So try to put it in an easy way. Try different ways of getting people on board, like something that is like, hey, this is really cool. You shouldn't miss this out. And it's again like what we've been trying to do around Brisbane and talking to different people and having different views on the same problem. And it's just amazing how it doesn't matter. Who you talk to, everybody is facing the same problem in a way or another, which is what we're discussing here. And we're trying to find a solution for that problem in a way that it's actually going to work. And we don't know yet if it's going to work, but at least we are trying, I guess.
Tanya, anything? You don't have to. Okay, Alex?
So nice, straightforward questions. I might go a little bit more ridiculous, sorry. We've talked about a lot of C-suite and executive level stuff, but I would kind of want to phrase my question from anything from manager and above. In organisations currently, there's an expectation, doesn't matter which department you're in, whether you're a finance person or an HR person, there's still an expectation that you understand enough about IT and enough about finance, enough about HR, enough about every other one of these departments. There's kind of that expectation that you at least have a base knowledge across that. So my question is where does data play, and is data already one of those extra things where that expectation is that your person who's a manager in HR understands not just finance and what the financial implications are, not just their HR implications, not just their marketing expectations, not just their IT expectations, but should they not at every level above not understand their data implications and have at least a base data understanding?
So I'll take that first because I like ridiculous. It's not ridiculous, by the way. So yes and no. So it's what we said before. They have to have a base knowledge, 100%, because we live in a data-driven world, right? All of our decisions are data-driven. Whether we do cost-benefit analysis, whatever we do, everything we do now in our entire lives is data-driven. If they don't have a basic understanding of, hey, this is data, why should I use it, what does it basically look like, it's going to be hard, right? Especially because, to be honest, most people above them and below them have some kind of an understanding. So they need to be able to talk the same language. Do I think they need to know the ins and outs? For example, do I think they need to know data pipelines and the difference between using a data lake versus no, 100% not. They need to have that relationship with the teams that do know that level of knowledge. They don't need to know it themselves. If they aren't curious and they don't want to understand the data that drives their business, I would say that is problematic. Yeah. Absolutely.
So a lot of what you've talked about tonight is kind of from the assumption that those people don't have even that base understanding. And it's been a lot about how do we get people at manager level and above across the organisation to at least have that.
I think there's a big difference between understanding what data is and understanding its usefulness and understanding where you can use it. Yeah. And I think a lot of what we've been talking about tonight is understanding where data can be beneficial and understanding those areas that they might not know. So especially people like Evan and Aldo, if you give them a business problem, rather than coming to them and going, I just need a dashboard, or I just need a predictive model, whatever, just tell me stuff. If you just come to them and go, hey, here's our business problem, I trust you to come up with a solution, that's what we should be expecting. They don't need to know what that model is, they don't need to know what that solution is, they don't need to know if it's a dashboard, if it's a productionized model, if it's an application, doesn't matter. They need to know, hey, I don't know the answer, but I think I may be able to find an answer within data. That's what I'd say.
So does that seem any different to you in the sense of those people have enough finance background, they understand they may not understand all the debits and credits and how this moves from cash asset or whatever, but they at least understand budgeting and what it costs.
You learn everything, right? So no matter what, if you change roles, you're going to learn new stuff, right?
So what's your, asking the fourth question here, what's your understanding of the market so far in terms of data literacy across an organisation and the expectations?
Very dependent. What I've seen is it's very, very different depending on the organisation, and what they think they are is usually not what they are. So understanding where someone actually is versus where they think they are is key to success. Someone laughed, I like that.
I think I might add to that as well. There's a great book that's worth reading, and I can't tell you the author, I can just tell you the title, and that is Measure What Matters. And I think in any role that you take on, you should understand what are the key, and again it's the strategy, what are the key strategy items that are relevant to your role? What are the measurements that you need to measure that? And having those very well clear and clearly outlined will make your job easier to know what data you need to know about.
Exactly.
And I think that is kind of the key. And the same goes with even finance. You need to understand your budgets, right? But do you need to understand the whole company budget? Maybe, maybe not. You need to know what matters for your role and perhaps the impacts that it has externally. And you need to be, clear on that from a business perspective, and then the data will follow. Does that make sense?
Cool. I think we'll wrap up there with one last question that all of you are going to answer real quickly, because I think I can see some tight faces out here. Looks like we need to do some mingling and have some drinks and have some food. But from all of you, real quickly, in 1 minute, can we do that? In 1 minute, in your view, what does the data analytics and AI industry look like in 5 to 10 years? Aldo, we'll start with you. Work it this way, and then we'll wrap it up.
I see the AI or data analytics or data industry to be or to become one of the most valuable assets of every company, because it's going to be used accordingly, and that would probably come from the technology and the evolution of technology. With that same evolution of technology, we might see that all the coding that has been required is going to be less and less and less. We have now amazing tools like Talent or Alteryx where you just need to drag and drop processes and link them, and there's no need to actually code. That leaves more room for the data analysts to actually look at the outcome, be creative, solve different problems, getting more and more complex with the problems that we are solving. Therefore, I think that the soft skills are going to be more and more important, so that data or the technical people are going to have this to develop these communication skills, these networking skills, the business skills, and so on, so that they can keep up with this trend. And it's going to be, everywhere. You just have to see all the data that we leave behind by using a mobile, or by being on Facebook, or by just signing in because of COVID or things like that.
I think for me the big thing is going to be embedded analytics and also reduction of the buzzwords, because data is so common now, it's everywhere. You're going to hear less terms like I just need AI, I just need ML. Those buzzwords are going to go away, and it's just going to be outcomes. No one's going to care anymore that it's delivered by data and analytics, because it's just going to be a way of doing something. Embedded analytics will be, rather than people going to a spreadsheet and going, I need to look at a spreadsheet or a system to look at my numbers, it's fed to you. It's fed to you in the systems that you're using, in the way that you're using it. I think that's really where the future is, rather than having to step outside and look for data and analytics. It's just going to be part of what you do every day.
So I second that. I was about to say something very similar. I think that there will be still a core set that are called your data engineers, if you like, and they may not or may interact well with the business, who knows. But I think that the analysts and the data scientists and everybody else that sort of surrounds data will be very much integrated within the business environment. That's what I would love to see as well. I think that's where we probably are headed.
Okay. Was the guy you introduced me to QT Malcolm Thatcher?
Yes.
So, yeah. I sat down, Rachel was kind enough to introduce me to, I think, the head of digital, is he? A head of digital transformation or digital processes at QUT one time. She sent me an email, you've got to talk to this guy. And Malcolm's a very smart guy. So he's a full professor there. He's thought about these type of things. He's led very senior roles across Queensland, I think, but eHealth and a few other
He was
places.
even Marta, actually.
Was he a Marty? Yeah, he's had some extremely high roles. And I sat down, I was chatting to him, and I was picking his brain, asking, look, what do you think is going to happen in the next coming decades around this data and analytics space? And he said, look, I've got one prediction, that's it. One thing. One thing will happen that will change the game for every organisation. Every single organisation will be affected. He said, what will happen is, in the coming decades, data will become the only asset on an organisation's balance sheet. The only asset will be data. That was his prediction. For any organisation, in any industry, in any company, data will be the key. And so what that means is, what does the data analytics AI industry look like in the future? It could almost see a schism between the companies that embrace it and grab it and say, this is important, I need this to be competitive and to survive, and the companies that don't, that keep saying, look, I'm great at making decisions, I know how to drive my truck from one side of Brisbane to the other, I've known it for the last 50 years and it ain't going to change, buddy. And I think you will see that, and I think you'll see the difference between the companies that embrace this, and this will lead the AI industry, these use cases, this recognition of it, and that'll drive the change within the industry, will be a schism between those companies that see that asset and sweat that asset like a truck. They're going to start sweating it, they're going to start getting an ROI from it, and those that don't.
Fantastic. Wow, okay. On behalf of everyone here, thank you very much for being our panelists today. That was fantastic, I loved it.